All right, you've passed ASPEC 101, but now you're ready for your spring semester. I've even got my spring clothes ready to go. Once again, I am here presenting another PowerPoint, so to speak. Not literally, but you know what I mean. If you're on the asexual or aromantic spectrum, you know how it goes. Explaining our identities to people sometimes feels like we need an actual slideshow prepared. Now, last time I broke down the basics of what it means to be aromantic and asexual, but it was pointed out to me that one thing I didn't quite explore enough was what it means to be repulsed or averse to romance or sex. I made it sound a little too one-sided, like aspec people want those things. And I'm actually a sex-averse ace myself, so it's really important to me to acknowledge and explain these experiences. And even if I wasn't, it's still how other people experience their identity, and that's really important that we be accurate. Being both thorough and accountable for when I mess up or am not clear as I wanted to be are very important to me. So today I'm doing a follow-up. Think of it like an extended edition of that PowerPoint. If you could take a moment as we kick off though, please remember to give this video a like, drop your thoughts in the comments as we go along, and subscribe for more content with notifications turned on so you never miss out. With that said, let's get into some new vocabulary and learn about repulsed and averse aspecs. First, let's talk about what it actually means to be romance repulsed, romance averse, sex repulsed, or sex averse. These terms describe how someone personally feels about romance or sex, and it's important to know that these feelings exist on a spectrum. All right, so let's break it down. And again, these are going to sound kind of general. It can depend on the person. But romance averse people are just not into romance for themselves. They might be neutral about it in general, or maybe even really into romance as a concept or for entertainment or even for the people in their lives, but they don't want it in their own life. Romance repulsed people take that a step further. It's not just not for me, it's more like, please keep that away from me. Seeing romance, hearing about it, being pressured into it, it can be anything from uncomfortable to deeply distressing. Sex-averse aces like myself might be fine with sex as a concept and knowing that it exists and being okay with even having conversations about it. But it's just not personally for them. It's not something they're interested in engaging in. They might be fine having conversations about it, hearing about it, seeing it on TV, but it's a no-go as far as actually engaging in it themselves. For me, I can't even picture myself. I don't want to picture myself in that kind of situation. And sex repulse aces, they often have a strong negative reaction to sex. It can cause anxiety. Sometimes it can make them feel nauseous. It can feel distressing, whether it's being expected to participate in it or even just the way it's presented in media. And here's the thing. Just like we talk about the spectrum of experiences and micro labels, the spectrum also ranges in feelings specifically about romance or sex. Some are totally indifferent, some enjoy romantic or sexual relationships, and some are even enthusiastic about them. But for those who are repulsed or averse, and those who are not, their feelings are all equally real and valid. This metaphor might not make sense to everybody, but I think of these the way I think of certain stronger drinks. Some folks love them. Some tolerate them or are willing to have them in moderation. Some folks just like going out with friends without feeling pressured to try it themselves. Some might feel like hearing the stories the next morning is perfectly fine. Some might have experiences of getting really sick from them, and even now the smell of that drink makes them uneasy. And some might not be into that life at all. It's all about the individual, and there's nothing wrong with any of those feelings. All right, now that we have our definitions, let's talk about what this looks like in real life. Because if you're romance repulsed, romance averse, sex repulsed, sex averse, you've probably run into some of these experiences. For example, have you ever heard someone say, "Oh, you just haven't met the right person"? Or, "You're overreacting. Sex and romance are normal parts of human life." Or, "You'll change your mind someday." Yeah, no. These responses can be really frustrating because they ignore the reality that some of us just genuinely don't want romance or sex for ourselves. And in some cases, we don't even want to see it or hear about it or be around it much. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, it's true that some identities can change and identity can be fluid, but that's not going to be the case for every single person. And you should never just assume that's going to be the case for someone. Another common struggle: media representation. Some of you may immediately gasp when I say this, but a few days ago, I got a text from my sister. She was watching a certain show and got really excited to text me that there was ace representation, because even though she's not ace herself, she understands how little of that there is and how important to me that is to be seen. The problem is, she had only gotten a few minutes into that show. And when she texted, she hadn't gotten far enough to really see what was going on. The show she was watching was House. It was just a few minutes later that she followed up with, "Oh, wait, he might actually be trying to disprove asexuality." Yeah, that's exactly what that episode tried to do. And that's just it. She had me to talk to, but how many people who aren't aspec and don't know yet anyone who's open about it have probably seen that episode or something similar and thought that it was accurate representation? The assumption that everyone secretly wants romance or sex runs so deep that it can be hard to get people to take repulsed or averse identities seriously. But the truth is, these feelings are not a phase, not a trauma response for everyone, and not something that needs to be fixed. In the case of that House episode, it was a brain tumor that obstructed the patient's sex drive. But we know better. Depictions like this only bolster those false narratives. They hurt not only us, but the people who still struggle to truly understand us. Okay, so now we know what these identities mean and why they matter, but what does respect look like for repulsed and averse aspecs? For starters, respect people's boundaries. If someone says they don't want to engage in romance or sex, believe them. Don't try to convince them otherwise. Don't push them into situations they're uncomfortable with. I've been there and it sucks. And definitely don't say stuff like, "You're missing out." Almost 5 years ago, after I had started opening up about my experiences as an ace, and I'd even begun writing about it on social media, I started connecting with someone I thought I could like. I was drawn to her because mostly we had very similar tastes in music. She still listened to a lot of the bands that I do, even the ones that people barely talk about these days because they've been gone for so long. One in particular that meant a lot to me growing up, that I hadn't met anyone in years that even knew who they were, was Forever the Sickest Kids. It was during the shutdown, so we hadn't set an official plan for a date yet, but we would message back and forth over Snapchat. Now, I felt like things were going well, and I think that honesty and open communication is really important. She became the first potential partner that I told that I'm ace. I explained a little bit of it to her, and she asked a question or two, but then I got a photo. You can use your imaginations. Above it were the words, "I can change that," with a wink emoji, followed up by a couple other pictures. Now, she doesn't represent every person. To the aspecs out there, there are many more people who will respect your boundaries than there are those who won't. As for her, that date never did get scheduled, and I don't have Snapchat on my phone anymore. One thing I want every aspec watching to remember is that it's okay to advocate for yourself. If you don't want to watch certain shows, if you need to set clear expectations in relationships, or you just don't want to talk about certain topics, that's valid. Your comfort matters, and you don't have to compromise that. At the end of the day, no one should have to justify why they feel the way that they do. Romance and sex are not universal experiences. They're just two of the many ways that people connect with each other. And for some of us, they're simply not a part of the equation. So if you already identified with the terms in this video, or you're just realizing now that these are terms that might describe you, hey, you're not alone. There's a whole community of us out there. And if you're not repulsed or averse, that's okay too. Everyone's experience is different. Everyone's road is different. The important thing is that we understand and support each other. Do you have any specific tips for setting boundaries? Do you have any metaphors that you use when explaining your identity, like I did with the drinks example? What are some things that you keep in your back pocket to say in these situations? Share them out in the comments. You never know who might just need it. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Oh, and if you want more Aspec content, actually accurate Aspec content, unlike that house episode I mentioned, check out my book, Limitless, Poetry of an Aromantic and Asexual Journey. It's a poetry collection that follows my journey from a confused teen to where I am today. Links in the description for where to order it and for Goodreads, so you can tell me what you thought of it when you're done and see what other people think. And lastly, if there's ever something that I'm not clear enough about, or something that I failed to mention or discuss accurately, please let me know. I want this channel to be not just mine, but all of ours. And I want it to be informative and responsible with respect to everyone. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.